Recording 1C. You will hear the director of a childcare centre talking to the parent of a new child.
Good morning. My name is Bob Ferguson and I'm the director of Ascot Childcare Centre.
Oh, good morning. I'm Sally Ann Cullen. I made an appointment to enrol my daughter.
That's right. I've got the application form right here. Now, first I need some personal details. So the family name is Cullen, is that right?
That's right.
Now, what about your daughter? What does she like to be called?
Oh, her name is Alexandra, but we all just call her Alex. A-L-E-X.
Great. As you know, we organise the children into different age groups. There's the babies group, the toddlers, aged 2 to 3, and the preschoolers. They're aged 4 to 5. How old is your daughter?
Well, she'd go into the toddler group. She's just turned 3.
And we always like to make a note of our children's birthdays so we can celebrate it all together if they're at the centre on that day. When was she born?
Oh, the 8th of November.
Fine. And we also find it's a great help to know about siblings. Sometimes a problem at the centre can be related to problems with a sibling. Does she have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, a brother, Fraser. He's 2 years older.
So that would make him 5, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Fine. Now, we also need a contact address. Where do you live?
It's 108 Park Road. That's P-A-R-K, Maidstone.
Good. Now, last of all, we need a telephone number we can call if there are any problems.
Oh, well, I'll be at work and so will my husband, so the best number to call is 3467 8890.
Right. And is that a close relative?
Yes, it's my mother-in-law's number.
We prefer to make a note of how the person is related to the child, so I'll write down grandmother.
Yes, that does make more sense.
Now, that's all of the personal details. We also like to try and get a picture of your child's personal development. Can you tell me if there are any specific problems she's having? For example, does she get on well with other children? Is sleeping a problem?
Oh, she gets on well with others, I think, but she does have trouble sleeping. We gave up her daytime nap a long time ago.
That's good to know. I'll make a note of that. She can just have some quiet time while the others are resting if she likes.
That should be fine. She enjoys drawing quietly.
Right. Now, what about other skills? We occasionally take the children swimming, fully supervised, of course, and we only go in a paddling pool as we don't expect them to swim by themselves yet. Does your daughter need a lot of help getting changed?
No, not at all. In fact, she's been able to get dressed in the mornings for over a year now, so no problems there.
That must be a big help for you. Now, what about the childcare arrangements? Are there any specific days you require?
Well, I work Monday to Wednesday, but my mother-in-law has agreed to look after her on Wednesdays.
So does that mean that you'll just need Monday and Tuesday for now?
That's right.
And what about the pick-up time? We offer extended hours for parents who work a great distance away.
I work until 3 o'clock, but it takes me about half an hour to drive home, so ideally I'd like to pick her up at 4 if that's okay.
That would be fine. Now, is there any other information you'd like?
Recording 4B. You will hear a woman talking on the radio about things for children to do during the school holidays.
The school holidays are fast approaching, and I'm sure all of you parents out there are worried about how to occupy your children. Well, I have a few tips that may help keep your children entertained without spending large amounts of money. One of our biggest problems is that today's children often do not have the type of hobby that was familiar in the past, such as making their own toys. Instead, they rely on sophisticated video games to keep them amused. But children also like to feel needed. So why not give them jobs to do around the house? You may be surprised how much they will enjoy simple tasks such as washing your car. Another idea is to use this time to develop their cooking skills. Food is something we all enjoy, so why not get them to prepare some simple dishes in the kitchen? Learning to cook is a useful life skill for children to learn, and it can also keep them happy for several hours. Children also love doing arts and crafts, so why not give them the task of making presents for upcoming birthdays or celebrations? Not only will they enjoy making them, but you'll also save some money, and the family or friends who receive the gifts are sure to be delighted. A great idea to get children out of the house is to find out about how they can help in your local community. Perhaps there is a home for the elderly nearby. They are sure to welcome a visit from young people. Even a few minutes a week can brighten their day. Of course, younger children cannot do these things for very long, but older ones may find that there are ongoing projects around your neighbourhood that they can help with. These are just a few ideas, but I'm sure you can think of many more. If not, there are plenty of places to look for other suggestions. Nowadays, the first place people seem to look is the internet, which can be a good source of information. However, it does have its limits, because ideas suitable for children living in the city may not translate well for children in rural areas. So don't overlook your library. These are often filled with great ideas targeted at children in your specific area. There are a few key points to remember, however. One of the most important things is to keep your children active, otherwise they will be sure to get bored. Also, remember that although children can be very independent, even from 9 or 10 years old, you should still be there to take care of them up to the age of 12. So don't be tempted to let older children babysit their younger siblings. This should only be done by an adult.
Unit 5. Exam practice. Listening. You'll hear 2 university students discussing experiments. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi, Al. Sorry to interrupt you when you're having your lunch, but I wanted to ask you a favour.
Oh, sure, no problem. Sit down, Josie. I've finished anyway. What do you need?
Well, I was wondering if I could ask you about the experiments we were talking about in the seminar the other day with Dr. Robinson. I'm doing my teaching practice on Thursday and Friday, and I'm a bit concerned about it. I wasn't entirely sure I understood them completely. If I don't understand them, then the pupils don't have any chance.
You mean the ones to determine the speed of sound?
Yes, that's right. Well, I think I understood the first one, but the second one was more complicated.
Yes, that's true. Well, let's check what you thought of the first one, the one that you'll have to take the kids outside for.
OK, let me see. Well, you need to get 2 groups to stand exactly 200 metres apart on the playing fields, and one has a bell or a loudspeaker or some other loud sound source and a flag, and the other group has a stopwatch.
Yes, although it doesn't have to be 200 meters. It's just that it makes the experiment easier the more distance between them. It depends on the space available.
Right. And the idea is that one group raises the flag at exactly the same moment as they make a noise, and the other group starts the stopwatch when they see the flag and stops it when they hear the noise.
That's it.
And then you get them to do a simple calculation of velocity equals time divided by distance.
Yeah, it's a bit low-tech and it's not very accurate, but they should be able to get within about 20% of the actual figure if they're reasonably careful.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
OK, so I understand that. It's the other one, the one with the tube I was having a few problems with. Can you just talk me through that and tell me exactly what I have to explain to the pupils?
Okay. Well, the thing to remember is that sound is a wave, and waves have both frequency and wavelength. You should start them off with exploring waves in water, and that'll introduce a few key concepts. Sound waves aren't exactly the same because they're compression waves, but it's more or less the same principle, at least for pupils at this level.
I've got some ideas for that. So they understand wavelength and frequency, and then we move on to the experiment. For that we need, let me just have a look at my notes. A long tube, a tuning fork, and a large barrel of water. Now, what do they do with those? And what's the point of it?
It's fairly simple, really. You just have to remember that velocity equals wavelength times frequency.
Ah, yes. That's the key, isn't it?
Yes, the tuning fork is manufactured to produce a sound of a given frequency. So that just leaves you one thing to measure. The pupils hit the tuning fork so that it makes a sound and hold it toward the end of the long open tube. That makes the air vibrate. They should slowly move the tube up and down. They'll find that in some positions it gets louder. That's because of resonance.
What's that again?
It's when there are a whole number of waves in the column of air in the tube. It makes it louder. They then measure the length of the column of air, and they can work out the wavelength from that.
And that's more accurate than the other experiment?
Well, it is if the pupils take an average using different tuning forks. It should be much more accurate.
Thanks, Al. That's clear to me now. I can't think of any more problems.
Just make sure that the pupils keep good records. You need to tell them how important that is. Any mistakes with the maths can be corrected later, but you don't want them to have to go back and get the data again. You probably wouldn't have time for that anyway.
Good advice, yes. I just hope it goes well in the classroom now.
Good luck.
Unit 6. Exam practice. Listening. You'll hear a lecturer talking to students about a printing process. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
As I've made clear in earlier lectures, many different solutions have been proposed to the basic technological problem of getting meaningful marks onto paper. In other words, several different forms of printing have developed over the years, many of which are still in use today for different purposes. This week, I'd like to discuss the rotogravure process. This is one of the most widely used printing processes, and after describing how the process works, I'll be describing some of its industrial uses and the advantages and disadvantages of this form of printing. As the name implies, rotogravure is a form of printing in which large cylindrical pieces of metal rotate, while the paper to be printed passes between them. The paper is held in place against the printing surface by the impression roller. The weight of this roller is one of the factors that affect how much ink is actually transferred to the paper. Remember that this roller does not directly transfer ink onto the paper. The side in contact with the impression roller remains blank, and it's the other side of the paper which is actually the printed side. The impression roller presses the paper against the ink-bearing roller, generally known as the gravure cylinder. This roller is etched or engraved using either a laser or a diamond-tipped etching machine. This creates a large number of tiny holes in the surface of the roller which hold the ink. The depth and size of these holes determines how much ink is picked up from the ink fountain, which the whole printing assembly rests in. How much ink is picked up in turn determines the density of the image produced. As it rotates, the lower roller picks up more ink on its surface than is required, and this needs to be removed before contact with the paper. A flat edge, called the doctor blade, scrapes against the surface and removes all ink which is not in one of the holes on the surface of the lower roller. This should lead to a clean image.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now that we understand a little of the mechanics of rotogravure printing, I'd like to look at it in the wider context of the printing industry and discuss the main uses. One of the main advantages of the rotogravure process is that the amount of ink which can be transferred to the paper is high compared to other printing methods. This means that a broad density range can be produced. In other words, with rotogravure, it's possible to produce many different light and dark shades, making it particularly suitable for reproducing photographs and fine art. For shorter print runs, some other processes may give a finer image, but rotogravure is ideal for jobs that involve printing, for example, 1 million magazines. One common place where you'll see printed matter that has been produced by rotogravure is in the advertising material that is often inserted into Sunday newspapers. Of course, it's not just paper that can be printed by rotogravure. It's a very flexible process, since the rollers used can be made to any size required. Whether it's consumer packaging or large rolls of floor covering that need to be printed, rotogravure is a relatively cheap, quick method that is used in a variety of industries. This isn't to say that rotogravure is without its disadvantages. Probably the main drawback is the fact that, with large areas of colour, the dots are visible, even without using any kind of magnifying aid. Now, does anyone have any questions about the rotogravure process?